Our lovable, absorbent friend SpongeBob has been in tons of video games over the years. Some were okay, some were fantastic, and some weren't. This video game, based on the television special celebrating the show's 10th anniversary, is unfortunately a game with a lot of great potential, but bad quality and other issues just make this game a chore to play. The game starts with SpongeBob being excited for the upcoming anniversary of the Krusty Krab's existence. And he's been entrusted with the Krabby Patty recipe to keep it from Plankton. But in all his excitement, he loses it and becomes desperate to find it again. So he receives help from Plankton, who has a memory machine that can help. SpongeBob makes it clear that he'd have to research his happiest memories in addition to the memory containing the location of the recipe, since he can't remember anything important when sad. This allows for the game to let you play through some of our Sponge friends' earlier adventures. So it turns out Plankton yet again wants the recipe all to himself, so he sends robots into SpongeBob's head to find the memory. But since the controller for them is quickly broken afterwards, Plankton then goes in his mind to find it himself. This results in SpongeBob going through his early adventures, from meeting Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy and helping them out of retirement, to meeting Sandy for the first time, to getting the job of a fry cook at the Krusty Krab. Although, due to the robots in the main character's head, the memories are warped and not as one would remember them. While it does share the story, though there are great differences, of the television special, one that was particularly boring, of the same name, the story in this game is actually somewhat entertaining. It's interesting to see a newer take on older episodes and play through them. A nice thing I noticed is, unlike a lot of games in this series, this game tries to capture the humor of the series, which a good number of times it does successfully. Quite unfortunately, this is one of the biggest problems with this game. The gameplay is very repetitive and gets incredibly boring by the second level. The game is a platforming game, so climbing, running, occasional obstacles, and bosses are the majority of the game. Your player has a few powers. Most aren't available by the time you start the first level. Some areas require certain abilities, so you need to go back to levels you've played before once the powers are acquired to access those areas. A good deal of the game is beating every robot within your grasp. While some fights can be avoided, the majority cannot, and all have to be destroyed before you progress. This adds to the fact the game is boring because it's overused. At first, it wasn't too bad, even with lots of robots around you, since 2 hits from you would take them out, although later on they're even stronger. But don't deal so much damage. At worst, these sections aren't hard or anything like that. But with all the robots around you that take multiple hits to take out, as well as the space given, some areas are smaller and hard to manage with, at worst, these parts are just plain annoying. The game does have interesting ideas, although they aren't used too much, like shaking the Wii remote left and right to make SpongeBob do his spin attack and swinging the nun cook down to do a slam attack, and the interesting power-ups that help get past certain obstacles. Some power-ups, like the Sponge Buff pickup, will give SpongeBob increased strength so he can smash through things he could not before, and his spin attack can be used to solve even bigger problems. The game has a fair amount of boss battles, starting from the second level and onward, with few exceptions. These bosses are usually defeated by waiting for them to attack, and they'll get tired and expose a weak point which you can attack. Although some bosses, the one in the Christmas-themed level in particular, really are designed horribly and are just confusing. What really doesn't help is the camera. This game has an incredibly annoying camera. Some areas are hard to navigate, and usually easy tasks are made abnormally difficult, such as jumping across a small gap, due to the camera randomly spinning around or the camera being as far away as possible. probably the best this game has to offer. The controls are exceptional. All of the actions and motion controls are very easy to learn. You can get the hang of them fairly quickly and are very responsive. The controls won't cause the player really any problem. These are nothing special. Here, it is just above average. The level environments are nothing amazing and are not particularly memorable aside from the end of the first level with the circle of giant SpongeBob statues. Character models are a mixed bag. A good number of characters look good in 3D form. Patrick Star, Plankton, Gary and Squidward are fine examples of this. However, characters like SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs, and others look pretty bizarre at points, namely in the in-game cinematics, which mostly have some facial expressions from SpongeBob look poorly animated and just weird. The difficulty. A very mixed bag. This game is completely random as far as difficulty goes. The things that make the game mostly easy is the fact enemies don't move really fast and don't do much damage. They can also be taken out fairly quickly if the situation is handled right. Although sometimes in later levels, they'll surround you and literally gang up on you, leaving you with very little space to breath. Although the game literally showers you with extra lives. This isn't in any way exaggeration. I started the game with 3 lives. I finished it with more than 90 lives. Extra lives aren't hard to find either, with some pickups just lying around, and some ranging from 1 life to 5 lives. Then, in the case with boss battles, they start out great. They're easy enough to figure out what to do and can be enjoyed in a way. Although quickly, it becomes very difficult to figure out what is the weak point in your boss and how you access it without getting pulverized. Another factor is the health upgrades. At first, the health bar is made up of 2 pairs of pants. Each pair can take 2 hits before you lose a bar. The player can buy more to the point where your health bar is made of 5 pairs of pants. This somehow makes you a little unstoppable until you hit the final few levels where enemies somewhat become a challenge. The lowest parts of the game, the music is pretty bad. The main problem is the lack of music. There's always music playing in the game, but there aren't many music tracks, and what tracks are in the game are nerve-wracking and loop quickly to add to the problem. The sound is even worse. Before I get to its problems, I must acknowledge its fantastic voice acting in the in-game cinematics. Now, the problem with the voice acting, while fantastic in the cinematics, in the actual gameplay is as annoying as you can get. First, the lack of sayings. It is not uncommon for a character in a video game to repeat a recorded line once in a while, but in this game it happens repeatedly and becomes very annoying very quickly. I cannot begin to imagine many times I've heard SpongeBob say, "I'm so happy I could hug a jellyfish hive," not counting how many times he can say it in a row. Sometimes the music and sound effects bug out. Skipping music and dialogue, the sound effects, aside from voice acting, can also be a bit annoying. It had potential and interesting ideas, but poor execution, and it ended up just not being fun. I surely wouldn't recommend it.
I can lick anything you throw at me. On to the next challenge.